Okay, in chapter 5 and 6, Sal starts to talk to her grandparents about dinner at Phoebe's house. And she talks about Mr. Winterbottom and Mrs. Winterbottom, Phoebe's sister Prudence, who's 17, Phoebe, and herself eating dinner. And she talks about how Mrs. Winterbottom keeps saying lots of things, but nobody is talking back to her. And she just keeps sighing after she says things. So I think that Mrs. Winterbottom feels like nobody is listening to her when she's talking. So she talks about a whole bunch of stuff, and then she talks about the blackberry pie that they eat for dinner. And then the other thing she talks about is when she goes home from dinner at Phoebe's house, Phoebe says that she thinks that Margaret killed her husband and buried him in the backyard. So that's a little scary. And then in chapter 6, she starts thinking more about the blackberry pie, and how one time Phoebe's dad left flowers for his mom at the house, and when they went to go say thank you for the flowers, Phoebe's mom got really sad, Sal's mom got really sad, and she thought that was strange that she was sad about the flowers that her dad gave her, because she was crying, and she says that she'll never be as good as he is. So Sal feels really confused. She also tells us about how the next day there is a bowl of blackberries that her mom picked and left on the table for her dad and for Sal. And then she comes and says, "I'm almost as good as your dad." So that's kind of confusing to Sal. She feels confused about why her mom would do that. Hi guys, I miss you guys so much, and I'm excited to read today. We're going to read chapter 7 today, and chapter 7 is called Illinois. "Well, looky here," Gramps shouted. "The Illinois state line." He pronounced Illinois, Illinois, exactly the way everyone in Bybanks, Kentucky pronounced it. And hearing that Illinois made me suddenly homesick for Bybanks. "What happened to Indiana?" Gramps said. "Why, you gooseberry," Gramps said. "That's where we've been the past 3 hours, barreling through Indiana. You've been listening to the story of Peeby and Plum Mist, Indiana. Do you remember Elkhart? We ate lunch in Elkhart. Don't you remember South Bend? You took a pee in South Bend. Why, you missed the entire Hoyser state, you gooseberry." He thought this was very funny. Just then the road curved. It actually curved. This was a shock. And off to the right was a huge jing-bang mass of water. It was as blue as the bluebells that grow behind the barn in Bybanks, and that water just went on and on. It was all you could see. It looked like a huge blue pasture of water. "Are we at the ocean?" Graham asked. "We're not supposed to be passing the ocean, are we?" "You, gooseberry. That's Lake Michigan." Gramps kissed his finger and put it against Graham's cheek. "I sure would like to put my feet in that water," Gramps said. Gramps swerved across 2 lanes of traffic and onto the exit ramp, and faster than you could milk a cow, we were standing barefoot in the cool water of Lake Michigan. The waves splashed up on our clothes, and the seagulls flew in circles overhead, calling in one great chorus as if they were glad to see us. "Huzzah, huzzah," Graham said, wriggling her heels into the sand. "Huzzah, huzzah." He stopped that night on the outskirts of Chicago. I looked around at what I could see of Illinois from the Howard Johnson Motel, and it might as well have been 7,000 miles from the lake. It all looked precisely like northern Ohio to me, with its flat land and long, straight roads. And I thought what a very long journey this was going to be. With the dark came the whispers, "Rush, hurry, rush." That night I lay there trying to imagine Lewiston, Idaho, but my mind would not go forward to a place I had not been. Instead, I kept drifting back to Bybanks. When my mother left for Lewiston, Idaho, that April, my first thoughts were, how could she do that? How could she leave me? As the days went on, many things were harder and sadder, but some things were strangely easier. When my mother had been there, I was like a mirror. If she was happy, I was happy. If she was sad, I was sad. For the first few days after she left, I felt numb, non-feeling. I didn't know how to feel. I would find myself looking around for her to see what I might want to feel. One day, about 2 weeks after she had left, I was standing against the fence watching a newborn calf wobble on its thin legs. It tripped and wobbled and swung its big head in my direction and gave me a sweet, loving look. Oh, I thought, I am happy at this moment in time. I was surprised that I knew this all by myself, without my mother there. And that night in bed, I did not cry. I said to myself, Samantha Treehiddle, you can be happy without her. It seemed a mean thought, and I was sorry for it, but it felt true. In the motel, as I was remembering these things, Graham came and sat on the edge of my bed. She said, Do you miss your daddy? Do you want to call him? I did miss him, and I did want to call him, but I said, No, I'm fine, really. He might think I was a goose if I had to call him already. Okay, then, Chickabiddy, Graham said, and when she leaned over to kiss me, I could smell the baby powder she always used. This smell made me feel sad, but I didn't know why. The next morning, when we got lost leaving Chicago, I prayed, Please don't let us get in an accident. Please get us there in time. Gramps said, At least it's a mighty fine day for a drive. When we finally found a road heading west, we took it. Our plan was to curve across the lower part of Wisconsin, veer into Minnesota, and then barrel straight on through Minnesota, South Dakota, and Wyoming, sweep up into Montana, and cross the Rocky Mountains into Idaho. Gramps figured it would take us about a day in each state. He didn't intend to stop too much until we reached South Dakota, and he was really looking forward to South Dakota. We're going to see the Badlands, he said. We're going to see the Black Hills. I didn't like the sound of either of those places, but I knew why we were going there. My mother had been there. The bus that she took out to Lewiston stopped in all the tourist spots. We are following along in her footsteps. That's the end of chapter 7. All right, chapter 8 is called The Lunatic. Once we were well on the road out of Illinois Way, Graham said, Go on with Peavy. What happened next? Do you want to hear about the lunatic? Goodness, Graham said, as long as it's not too bloody. That Peavy is just like Gloria, I swear. A lunatic, imagine. Gramps said, Did Gloria really have a hankering for me? Maybe she did, and maybe she didn't, Graham said. Well, gall dang, I was only asking. Seems to me, Graham said, you've got enough to worry about, concentrating on these roads, without worrying about Gloria. Gramps winked at me in the rearview mirror. I think our gooseberry is jealous, he said. I am not, Graham said. Tell about Peavy, Chickabiddy. I did want Graham and Gramps to get in a fight over Gloria, so I was happy to continue telling Phoebe's story. I was at Phoebe's one Saturday morning when Mary Lou Finley called and invited us over to her house. Phoebe's parents were out, and Phoebe went all around the house checking to make sure that the doors and windows were locked. Her mother had already done this, but she made Phoebe promise to do it as well. Just in case, Mrs. Winterbottom had said. I was not sure just in case of what. Maybe in case someone had snuck in and opened all the windows and doors in the 15 minutes between the time she left and the time we did. You can never be too careful, Mrs. Winterbottom had said. The doorbell rang. Phoebe and I looked out the window. Standing on the porch was a young man who looked about 17 or 18. Although I am not as good at guessing people's ages as blind Mrs. Partridge is. The young man was wearing a black t-shirt and blue jeans, and his hands were stuffed into his pockets. He seemed nervous. My mother hates it when strangers come to the door, Phoebe said. She is convinced that any day one of them will burst into the house with a gun and turn it to be an escaped lunatic. Oh, honestly, Phoebe, I said, do you want me to answer the door? Phoebe took a deep breath. We'll do it together. She opened the door and said hello in a cool voice. Is this 49 Gray Street? The young man said. Yes, Phoebe said. So the Winterbottoms live here. After Phoebe admitted that yes, it was the Winterbottom residence, she said, Excuse me a moment, please, and she closed the door. Sal, do you detect any signs of lunacy? There doesn't appear to be any place he could be hiding a gun. His jeans are really tight. Maybe he has a knife tucked into his socks. Phoebe could really be dramatic. He isn't wearing any socks, I said. Phoebe opened the door again. The young man said, I want to see Mrs. Winterbottom. Is she here or what? Yes, Phoebe lied. The young man looked up and down the street. His hair was curly and mussed, and There were bright pink circles on his cheeks. He wouldn't look us straight in the eye, but instead kept glancing to the left and right. I want to talk to her, he said. She can't come to the door right now, Phoebe said. I thought he might actually cry when Phoebe said that. He chewed on his lip and blinked 3 or 4 times quickly. I'll wait, he said. Just a minute, Phoebe said, closing the door. She pretended to look for her mother. Mom, she called. Yoo-hoo! She went upstairs, thumping loudly on the steps. Mother! Phoebe and I returned to the door. He was still standing there with his hands on his pockets, staring mournfully at Phoebe's house. That's strange, Phoebe said to him. I thought she was here, but she must have gone out. There's a whole lot of other people here, though, she added quickly. Scads and scads of people, but no Mrs. Winterbottom. Is Mrs. Winterbottom your mother? He asked. Yes, Phoebe said. Would you like me to leave a message? The little pink circles on his cheeks became even pinker. No, he said. No, I don't think so, no. He looked up and down the street and then up at the number above the door. What's your name? Phoebe. He repeated her name, Phoebe Winterbottom. I thought he was going to make a joke about her name, but he didn't. He glanced at me. Are you a Winterbottom too? He asked. No, I said, I'm a visitor. And then he left. He just turned around, walked slowly down the porch steps and on down the street. We waited until he had turned the corner before we left. We ran all the way to Mary Lou's. Phoebe was certain that the young man was going to ambush us. Honestly, like I said, she has a vivid imagination. All right, just to summarize what we read today, we read chapter 7 and chapter 8. We read about how they were staying in Chicago, Illinois for the night, and they are going to drive across the country, and they think that every state will take about a day. So they're going to drive for a couple more days. But when they stayed in the hotel in Chicago, Sal started thinking about when her mom left, and she thought about how when her mom was there, she always felt the same way her mom felt. But then when her mom left, she didn't know how to feel. And then one day she was out at the farm and she was watching a new baby cow learn how to walk. And she said that she felt happy. And she realized that she could feel happy without her mom telling her how to feel. So that's a big deal for her. And then the next chapter, they started talking about Phoebe again. So she's telling her grandma a story about Phoebe. And they were talking about how a young man came to Phoebe's house and asked if that was the Winterbottom house and if he could talk to her mom, but her mom wasn't there. And he just looked really sad. And I'm not sure why he looked sad. Why do we think he looked sad when they said that her mom wasn't there? I don't know. If you have any guesses, I want to hear them, okay? All right, you guys have a good day. I miss you. I'll see you soon.